You're born during the harsh winters of 9th century Scandinavia. The year doesn't matter much because time moves differently when survival is your only concern. Your mother gives birth to you in a wooden longhouse filled with smoke from the central fire pit. The walls are thick timber, but they barely keep out the bitter cold that defines this part of the world. Your first breath is a mix of wood smoke, animal musk, and the metallic scent that comes from weapons hanging on every wall. From the moment you enter this world, you're part of something bigger than yourself. Your family isn't just your blood relatives living under the same roof. It's an entire network of warriors, farmers, craftsmen, and seafarers who've sworn oaths to each other. Brotherhood here isn't about friendship or feelings. It's about survival, honor, and the promise that when death comes calling, you won't face it alone. Your childhood doesn't include playgrounds or toys made of plastic. Instead, you learn to work before you can properly walk. By the time you're 3 years old, your small hands are already busy feeding chickens, gathering eggs, and helping your mother prepare meals. The work never stops and nobody expects it to. Winter lasts for months, and every task you complete today might be the difference between eating and starving when the snow piles higher than your head. The longhouse you call home stretches nearly the length of a modern basketball court. Inside, your extended family shares the space with horses, cattle, and pigs during the coldest months. Privacy doesn't exist. Everyone sleeps on wooden benches built along the walls, and the central fire provides the only heat and light. The air stays thick with smoke because there are no windows, only a small hole in the roof that lets out some of the fumes. Your eyes burn constantly, and your clothes smell like charcoal and livestock. Your father spends his days working the land when he's not preparing for raids across the sea. He teaches you that strength comes from more than just muscle. It comes from knowing when to fight, when to negotiate, and when to sail away to find better opportunities elsewhere. His hands are scarred from years of gripping sword hilts and ship oars. He shows you these marks like they're medals, because in a way, they are. By the time you're 6 years old, you understand that your world operates on a simple principle. Take what you need, protect what you have, and never back down from a challenge. This isn't cruelty or mindless violence. It's mathematics. Resources are limited. Winter is coming, and the weak don't survive long enough to see spring. Your education doesn't happen in a classroom with books and writing tablets. Instead, you learn by watching, listening, and doing. Your father teaches you to identify different types of wood for building boats and weapons. Your mother shows you which plants can heal wounds and which ones will kill you if you eat them by mistake. Your uncle, a grizzled warrior with a braided beard, demonstrates how to read weather patterns by studying cloud formations and wind direction. The most important lesson comes when you're 7 years old and your father takes you down to the shoreline. He points to the longships pulled up on the beach and tells you that these vessels are more than just transportation. They're freedom, opportunity, and power, all carved from oak and sealed with tar. A man without a ship is trapped on whatever piece of land he was born on. A man with a ship can sail anywhere the wind will take him. You spend hours learning to work with your hands. Carving becomes second nature as you shape wood into bowls, spoons, and eventually weapon handles. Metalworking follows, and you discover that iron heated in a forge can be hammered into almost any shape you need. Your fingers develop calluses from gripping tools, and your shoulders broaden from swinging hammers and hauling heavy materials. Fighting isn't optional in your world. It's a skill as essential as knowing how to farm or build shelter. Your training starts with wooden sticks that represent swords, spears, and axes. You learn footwork first, because a warrior who can't move properly will die quickly, no matter how strong his arms might be. Balance comes next, followed by timing, distance, and the mental toughness required to keep fighting even when you're injured and exhausted. The older boys in your community aren't just playmates. They're your future brothers in battle, and the bonds you form with them now will determine whether you live or die during your first real raid. You wrestle with them in the mud, compete in swimming contests that leave you gasping for breath, and practice weapon techniques until your muscles ache. Trust develops through shared hardship, and you learn to read each other's movements like a language that needs no words. Your first taste of real violence comes during a dispute with a neighboring settlement over grazing rights for cattle. The argument escalates quickly, and before you know it, men are reaching for their weapons. You're too young to fight, but old enough to watch as your father and his sworn brothers form a line with their shields overlapping. The opposing group does the same, and for a moment, everything goes silent except for the sound of wind across the fields. The clash lasts only minutes, but it changes something inside you. The sound of metal against wood, the grunts and shouts of men pushing against each other, and the sight of blood in the grass makes your heart pound in a way that's both terrifying and exciting. Nobody dies this time, but you understand that death was always a possibility. Your father explains later that most conflicts end with one side backing down before things get too serious. The goal isn't always to kill your enemies. Sometimes it's enough to prove that you're willing to. Religious ceremonies happen regularly throughout the year, and they're nothing like the quiet, contemplative services you might imagine. These gatherings are loud, bloody affairs where animals are sacrificed to honor the gods who control weather, war, and fortune. You watch as horses and pigs are killed with ceremonial weapons, their blood collected in wooden bowls and sprinkled on stone altars. The meat gets cooked and shared among everyone present, turning the sacrifice into a communal feast that can last for days. Your understanding of the world expands as traveling merchants and warriors bring news from distant lands. You hear stories about wealthy monasteries across the sea where monks hoard gold and silver while living in peace. You learn about kingdoms where kings rule from stone castles and command armies that have never known defeat. These tales plant seeds in your mind, and you begin to dream about sailing beyond the horizon to see these places for yourself. Marriage negotiations begin early in your community, though not for love or romance. Families arrange unions based on practical considerations like land ownership, political alliances, and the potential for producing strong children. You watch as your older sister is promised to a warrior from a neighboring settlement, and you understand that your own future wife will be chosen the same way. Personal feelings matter less than creating bonds between families that can support each other during difficult times. The changing seasons dictate the rhythm of your life. Spring means planting crops, repairing buildings damaged by winter storms, and preparing ships for the raiding season. Summer brings long days of work in the fields, but also the possibility of sailing to distant shores in search of wealth and glory. Fall means harvesting whatever crops survived the short growing season and preserving food for the months ahead. Winter forces everyone indoors, where the long nights are filled with storytelling, weapon maintenance, and planning for the next year's adventures. Your teenage years approach quickly, and with them comes the expectation that you'll prove yourself worthy of adult responsibilities. The raids that once seemed like distant adventures are now immediate possibilities. Your training intensifies as older warriors share techniques for fighting in shield walls, boarding enemy ships, and surviving in foreign lands where everyone wants to kill you. Your first real test comes when you turn 15 and the village elders decide you're ready to join a raiding party. The announcement doesn't come with celebration or ceremony. Your father simply tells you to prepare your gear and be ready to sail within 3 days. Your stomach churns with a mixture of excitement and terror, but showing fear isn't an option. The other young men your age are making the same preparations, and you can see the same nervous energy in their movements. The longship you'll sail on stretches nearly 70 feet from bow to stern, with space for 30 oars and enough room to carry weapons, supplies, and whatever treasure you might find. The vessel sits low in the water, designed for speed and stealth rather than comfort. You run your hands along the carved dragon head at the front, wondering how many battles this ship has seen and how many men have died on its deck. Your gear is simple but effective. A round wooden shield reinforced with iron, a spear with an ashwood shaft, a sayax knife for close combat, and whatever armor your family can afford. Most warriors wear leather and mail, but full metal protection costs more than most families earn in several years. You'll have to rely on skill and luck to keep you alive, just like every other young warrior making his first voyage. The night before departure, your mother performs a ritual blessing over your weapons. She draws symbols in the dirt with a stick and speaks words in the old language that her grandmother taught her. The ceremony isn't about asking the gods to keep you safe. It's about requesting their favor in battle and ensuring that if you die, your death will be remembered with honor. She doesn't cry or beg you to stay home. That would shame both of you. Sleep doesn't come easily your final night on land. You lie on your bench in the longhouse, listening to the breathing of your family members and the crackling of the dying fire. Your mind races with thoughts of what awaits you across the water. Will you freeze to death during the crossing? Will enemy warriors kill you before you can draw your weapon? Will you prove yourself a coward when the moment of truth arrives? These questions have no answers, and morning arrives whether you're ready or not. The launch happens before dawn, while mist still clings to the water. You help push the longship into the surf, feeling the cold waves soak through your boots and trousers. The vessel comes alive as 30 pairs of oars bite into the dark water, and you take your place on the rowing bench. Your hands quickly develop blisters from gripping the oar handle, but complaining isn't permitted. Pain is temporary, but reputation lasts forever. The rhythm of rowing becomes hypnotic after several hours. Pull, lean back, push forward, dip the blade, pull again. Your shoulders burn and your back aches, but the constant motion keeps you warm despite the spray of cold seawater. The coastline disappears behind you, and soon there's nothing visible in any direction except gray water meeting gray sky. You're farther from home than you've ever been, with no way to return except the same ship that brought you here. Your first meal at sea consists of dried fish, stale bread, and water that tastes like the wooden barrel it's stored in. The food sits heavy in your stomach as the ship rocks with the waves, and several of the younger warriors lean over the side to vomit. The older men laugh at this display of weakness, but you notice they eat carefully and keep their movements steady. Experience teaches lessons that can't be learned any other way. Sleep on a long ship means curling up between the rowing benches with your cloak pulled tight against the wind. The deck is never completely dry, and the constant motion makes rest fitful at best. You dream of warm fires and solid ground, not only to wake up shivering in the pre-dawn darkness as someone shakes you awake for your turn at the oars. The cycle repeats itself day after day until you lose track of how long you've been at sea. Land appears on the horizon like a dark smudge that gradually resolves into cliffs, beaches, and green fields. This is enemy territory, inhabited by a people who speak a different language and follow a different god. They have wealth that your people need, and they're not going to give it up willingly. The ship's captain studies the coastline through narrowed eyes, looking for the perfect place to make landfall without being spotted by defenders. The final approach happens in silence. Oars move through the water without splashing, and every man checks his weapons one last time. Your heart pounds so hard you're sure everyone can hear it. But when you look around, you see the same tense expressions on every face. Fear isn't shameful as long as it doesn't control your actions. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite being afraid. Your boots hit the sand as you jump from the ship into knee-deep water. The beach is empty except for seabirds that scatter at your approach. The raid leader points toward a cluster of buildings visible in the distance, and the warband forms into a loose formation. You're no longer just a farmer's son from a northern village. You're part of a fighting force that's traveled hundreds of miles to take what it needs from people who have more than they can protect. The monastery sits on a hill overlooking the sea, its stone walls designed more for keeping out weather than warriors. Smoke rises from several chimneys, and you can see figures moving between the buildings. These are the people whose wealth has drawn you across the ocean. They live in peace, surrounded by books and gold and silver ornaments. That peace is about to end, and you're one of the reasons why. Your first battle cry tears from your throat as the warband charges up the hillside. The sound mingles with the shouts of your companions and the clash of weapons against shields. Everything you've trained for, everything you've prepared for, comes down to the next few minutes. Your legs pump as you run toward the monastery walls, spear in one hand and shield in the other. The ground blurs beneath your feet, and time seems to slow down and speed up simultaneously. The wooden gate splinters under the impact of axes and shoulders. Defenders appear on the walls, shouting warnings and hurling stones, but they're too few and too unprepared to stop 30 determined warriors. You surge through the breach with your shield brothers, and suddenly you're inside the monastery courtyard. The real fighting is about to begin, and there's no turning back now. A monk appears in front of you, clutching a wooden cross and speaking words in a language you don't understand. His eyes are wide with terror, and his hands shake as he holds up the religious symbol like it might protect him. For a moment, you hesitate. This man has never held a weapon or trained for battle. Killing him would be like slaughtering a sheep. Then you remember why you're here and what's expected of you, of you. Your spear moves before your mind makes the decision. The iron point slides between the monk's ribs, and he crumples to the stone floor with a gasp that sounds more like surprise than pain. His blood pools around the wooden cross, and you stare at what you've done for several heartbeats before someone shoves you forward. There's no time to think about the life you just took. Your brothers are already moving deeper into the monastery, and falling behind means dying alone. The corridors echo with shouts and the crash of overturned furniture as warriors search for anything valuable. You follow the sounds of destruction, stepping over scattered manuscripts and broken pottery. These monks collected knowledge the way your people collect weapons, but their books can't stop a blade or turn aside an axe. You find yourself in a chamber filled with golden cups and silver plates that gleam even in the dim light filtering through narrow windows. Your hands shake as you stuff precious objects into a leather sack. This is more wealth than your entire village sees in a year, just sitting on wooden shelves like common cooking pots. The irony isn't lost on you that these peaceful men surrounded themselves with treasures while your people scrape by on whatever they can grow or take. The redistribution feels justified, even necessary. A scream from outside pulls you back to the courtyard, where one of your shield brothers lies motionless near the well. Blood spreads from beneath his body, and his eyes stare at nothing. You've known this boy since childhood, wrestled with him in the mud, shared meals by the fire. Now he's gone, and the sight hits you harder than any training could have prepared you for. Death in stories always seemed clean and heroic. The reality is messier and more permanent. The raid leader calls for withdrawal before local defenders can organize a response. You help carry your dead companion back to the ship, his weight heavier than you expected. The return journey happens in near silence, broken only by the splash of oars and the occasional groan from wounded men. Victory tastes different than you imagined it would. The treasure in your sack feels both precious and meaningless compared to the friend you left behind. This was Viking life stripped of Hollywood glamour and romantic myths. Born into a world where survival demanded strength, loyalty meant everything, and brotherhood was forged through shared hardship and blood. You lived by the sword, died by the sword, and measured your worth not in years, but in the courage you showed when death came calling. The cold never left your bones, but neither did the fire in your heart.